Good evening. Welcome to the Masterclass. It's Saturday, 21st of June 2023. We've just had the honor and privilege of hosting the President of India, Honorable Draupadi Murmu ma'am, in my neighborhood, where they are setting up the Rashtrapati Niketan for public view. It used to be President's Summer Abode. And to that, they are going to add a 126-acre nature park, a forest. So I'm sure one day maybe we host the retreat here. That's why I wanted to mention this. So thank you. I'm really looking forward to the October retreat because we will host one masterclass live in October at the Sunbeam schools. So it should be good fun. Maybe you should book your tickets for Varanasi in October. You have a graphic with you in your WhatsApp. If you can look at it, we are designing productive failure, and it's all on the basis of this design. So, when you look at productive failure, it talks about four things. It talks about you have to have an effect, that's the outcome. To get the effect, there has to be an activation. That's what we have just done in the previous chapter 3. Now, to bring about activation, there has to be awareness. And once awareness happens, there has to be assembly. So you start with activation, bring about an awareness, then there has to be assembly, and that will be where effect will happen. The change will happen. The eureka of productive failure will happen when you are able to assemble an experience. So, on that note, I am going to open this new chapter. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do because I honestly love the Saturday masterclass. So I will flip open my Kindle. Here we are, Productive Failure, Chapter 4, Awareness. The great philosopher Socrates is well known to have said, awareness of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. I will repeat. Awareness of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom, and that is why we are here. We are being challenged about how this can happen, productive failure. So, philosophically, Socrates' dictum can be understood as an articulation of intellectual humility, a recognition that the scope of what one does not know far exceeds what one does. This acknowledgement of ignorance is not a defeatist perspective, but rather a starting point of genuine inquiry. Socrates famously claimed that he was wise not because he knew much, but because he understood the extent of what his own ignorance. The Socratic method derived from this approach involves asking a series of probing questions to challenging assumptions and reveal contradictions in one's thought. This method is not aimed to finding a correct answer, but to lead to aporia. Aporia, a state of puzzlement, impasse, or doubt, which is the fertile ground for philosophical investigation. It is in this state of aporia where one becomes open to acquiring wisdom because one has admitted to not having it. So let's record this. I think this is an interesting message we all must have with us. So the message has reached you. Do mull over it this week. It's a very, very important message. It's the core of why, as teachers, we take our learning forward because we never know enough. Consider the following hypothetical dialogue. See the next page between Socrates and one of his students. This hypothetical dialogue is designed to show how Socrates guides the student to the realization that failure and the recognitions of one's own ignorance is not only unavoidable but also beneficial in the pursuit of knowledge and skill. Through these questions, Socrates helps a student become aware of a gap in their understanding, the role of failure in learning, leading to a deeper insight into the nature of acquiring wisdom. So here we go. It's a very interesting dialogue. Socrates, tell me, do you believe what one can be good at something without ever having failed at it? Yes, I believe so. If someone is naturally talented, they can be good without failing. Socrates, a reasonable belief. Now, you have ever observed someone learning to play a musical instrument? Student, of course. Socrates, and did they play flawlessly from the beginning? Student, not exactly. They often made mistakes in the beginning. Socrates, so they failed in playing the correct notes at first. Student, yes, that's true. Socrates, if they had not been aware of their mistakes, could they have corrected them? Student, no. They needed to recognize their errors to improve. Socrates, then would you say awareness of failure was necessary for them to become good musicians? Student, I suppose so. Socrates, does it not then follow that one's awareness of their lack of skill or knowledge, in other words, their ignorance, is a step toward their improvement? Student, I see your point. One must be aware of their ignorance to improve. Socrates, so would you then agree that to be truly good at something, one must first become aware of their failures or gaps in knowledge? Student, I agree, Socrates. Socrates, and so would you still hold that one can be truly good at something without ever having failed at it? Student, no, Socrates. I now understand that failure and awareness of one's own ignorance are necessary to achieve true skill and wisdom. This pursuit of wisdom is therefore intrinsically linked to the concept of learning from failure. In recognizing your ignorance, we also recognize our fallibility. We are prone to mistakes and misjudgments. Each failure is a manifestation of our ignorance. And in reflecting on these failures, we learn not only about the subject at hand, but also about the limitations of our reasoning and understanding. By embracing failure as learning opportunities, we embrace the Socratic principle that wisdom begins with the awareness of ignorance. This is very interesting. I'm sure today's chapter is going to be a game changer. I'm just going to take a pause here and try and answer Kanishka's challenge. Perhaps the only one from the 1,000 registered teachers who's hamstrung. So I'm sure some teacher out you can help Kanishka Roy Chaudhary. I can't help her. She just can't log into Zoom for whatever reason. I suggest she replays this masterclass from the video and enjoys it. That's all I can suggest at this stage. Why she can't log in? Because it says you already joined this meeting from another device, which means she's possibly logged in on multiple devices. So do help her if anyone around knows where Kanishka is. It'll be great if she is satisfied and learned from her failure or ignorance. From Socratic dialogue to tutoring. Imagine you are trying to learn physics, working through a few problems with the help of a tutor. How the dialogue between you and the tutor unfolds will influence what and how much you learn. A good tutor, perhaps like Socrates, might be able to help you learn more than others who are not as skilled, which is why examining such tutorial dialogues is of keen interest to researchers. What makes some tutoring sessions more successful than others? In 2003, a group of researchers led by Kurt Vanlin looked into this by carefully analyzing conversations between students and their physics tutors. They wanted to figure out what happens in those dialogues that leads to actual learning. Precisely, what features of dialogue result in learning? They searched approximately 125 hours of tutorial dialogue between 42 university students and two experienced adult physics tutors for events that resulted in learning. And what they found was intriguing. They found that sometimes students are able to solve the problem without getting stuck, but at other times they would get stuck and not be able to move forward. They called getting stuck moments impasses. They found that not only were such impasses strongly associated with learning gains, but when students did encounter such impasses or roadblocks, they hardly learned anything no matter what tutor said or explained. Successful learning, it seems, almost requires that you reach an impasse. Why would it be so crucial to reach an impasse? So let's take this as an interesting way forward. So, as of now, we are at an impasse where you are all challenged to design your productive failure story. I'm sure that's an impasse. And how are we going to solve it? That's the question. So, this graphic comes to you for record as it governs the entire story of this chapter. Great. So, we will now look how an impasse helps you learn. How impasses lead to awareness of knowledge gaps and learning. Figure 4.1 shows the basic process of what happens after an impasse. When a student gets stuck, they immediately become aware that there is something wrong. They become aware that there is a gap in their current knowledge, and this awareness is key to them seeking a resolution. The impasse then becomes a strong learning opportunity, forcing the student to think harder, ask questions, and understand the concept deeply to move forward. Van Len and colleagues found out was that only when students were at an impasse were the tutor's explanations helpful and resulted in learning. When students were not in an impasse, the tutor's explanations did not result in learning. Struggling a bit with the problems helps you learn more, better than if someone just explains the answers. Before we can repair or resolve our misconceptions or failures, we need to become aware of them. And in the first place, even in tutoring situations, there seems to be a time for failing, a time for an impasse, followed by a time for telling, a time for impasse, followed by a time for telling. If you find yourself in a tutoring situation, then make sure you give your tutee a chance to work through problems on their own and encourage them to think deeply about where they are getting stuck. It's an interesting process which every teacher must try. And only when they get stuck and become aware of it, explain how they might proceed and help them get unstuck. Equally, if you are the tutee, remind your tutor to withhold explanations until they are stuck, because explanations are more likely to be useful in those moments than others. If impasses are so critical for building awareness of a knowledge gap and learning, then As the logic of productive failure goes, we should not wait for them to happen and instead intentionally design for them to engineer awareness and learning. Now, how do you intentionally design impasses? Because that is what the crux of the whole productive failure exercise is. Emilio Assange and colleagues tried to engineer impasses in their 2009 study with undergraduate students learning about geology, scientifically about tectonic plates. Figure 4.2, which will follow, represents the experimental design. First, all students saw a video on tectonic plates. Then, one group of students, the impasse condition, were prompted to think about a common misconception about tectonic plates and then shown an explanation of the misconception. They were then asked to solve a challenging problem regarding tectonic plates that students were unlikely to be able to solve. They were given the explanation for the solution of the problem. So you have an instructional video, you have impasse, prompt and explanation, problem solving and an explanation, and a post test. So the other method is no impasse. You gave the video, gave the explanations, and took a test. The other group, no impasse condition, did not have to think about the misconception or solving a challenging problem, but did receive explanations for both. Therefore, the only difference between the two groups was that the misconception prompt and the challenging problem, both of which work like triggers of impasses because they made students think about something they could not resolve on their own. After learning, all students took a post test where they were tested on how much they remembered the material and how well they could apply their knowledge to solve problems. On both measures, students who received impassive triggers significantly outperformed those who did not, demonstrating one way in which impasses can be designed to increase awareness of knowledge gaps while learning something new. See, till you don't challenge yourself, till you don't go beyond your breath in the run, till you don't go over the tipping point, nothing will happen. Similarly, you try and learn something. I give you a very interesting example these days. If we can't find a solution, we go to YouTube and try and find a solution. That's where using a productive failure. So, an example which I want to give live here is this. There's a struggle with our one dear teacher who's struggling for whatever reason to attend these seminars or these webinars. She has to find a solution. And if she can't, that's a productive failure. The same group of authors, this time led by Santiago Anqua, replicated the above findings in 2010 by showing that merely providing a prompt of possible misconceptions before presenting an instructional explanation can foster learning, especially for students with lower prior knowledge, as the warning helps students to become aware of their own knowledge gaps. There's something like the comprehension example in the activation phase, where you gave certain questions, where you help people pick up the prompts or you help them prime up. So if you help them prime up, they will then look deeply. So this was called priming in the last chapter on activation. Being warned of possible misconception is quite a simple nudge. If that itself builds gap awareness, then what about intentionally designed failure and problem solving the students go through in productive failure? One should expect even greater awareness of knowledge gaps. In 214, another experiment. Katharina Lobel and Nicole Rummel were the first ones to demonstrate how learning from productive failure builds an awareness of knowledge gap. Using the same materials I had developed for my studies on teaching statistics, specifically the concept of standard deviation described in chapter 2. They gave one group of students explicit instruction on the concept of standard deviation and then ask them to solve practice problems. Recall from chapter 2 that I called from the direct instruction condition or instruction followed by problem solving. The other group followed the productive failure model, where they solved the problem before receiving instructions. So we are going back a little flashback to chapter 2, where we talked about direct instructions. The direct instruction group had all the information required to solve the problem and therefore did not experience an impasse or failure. In contrast, the productive failure group was by definition designed to experience failure because students lacked the information required to solve the problems. What did they find? In the productive failure condition, reported significantly higher awareness of gap in their knowledge than the group that received direct instructions. So interesting. So what he's trying to explain now is that in the activation stage, we had this concept of direct instructions and not giving the direct instructions. So similarly here, awareness phase, only when you struggle, only I'll give you a simple example. You throw a non-swimmer into a pool, there is struggle. After finding struggle, you catch up with your breath. You learn to float and you start swimming. In Australia, babies are put first into a pool. They swim before they walk. Look at that. How deep productively. You know, if you don't know how to swim, you'll drown. As simple as that. Now, just because you will drown, you will not swim. Similarly, in so many things like that music example here, the bicycle example here, only when you get over that block that you have to make the attempt, you are aware of the shortfall of your ability. Will you have a challenge to take the step up? In figure 4.3 shows failure made them aware of the gap in their knowledge. This helped them derive greater benefit from subsequent instruction, especially when the teacher specifically contrasted and discussed the gaps between solutions and correct solutions. And that led to deep learning. Researchers such as Inga Grogger-Frey and colleagues have since replicated the effect of productive failure or knowledge gap awareness in two experimental studies reported in 2015. Although the experiments were designed to test a different hypothesis, both their experiments followed the problem solving followed by instruction. We had PSI, if you remember, that's what we discussed design that we discussed in chapter 2. In both the experiments, the productive failure condition reported higher knowledge gap than the other condition where students did not experience failure. Christian Hartman and colleagues echoed similar findings in their 2021 study. Collectively, these studies demonstrate how an impasse of problem solving failure helps build an awareness of a knowledge gap. In these studies, the experience of an impasse or problem solving failure was sufficient. As can be seen in figure 4.1, we saw that. And in figure 4.3, we'll see that. In both cases, an impasse or failure to solve a problem was sufficient for us to recognize and realize that there is a gap. See, only when you do a diagnosis in basic medicine do you realize what functional gaps there are in your measurement. And then the doctor goes about overcoming those with medication, with other directions. So, impasse is to find out what exactly is wrong. And that's what diagnostic is all about. And if at this time the right explanation or instruction is provided, we learn better. So, similarly, when you know what the challenge is through good diagnostic and your medicine will work better, you'll find a solution. Giving you a parallel example in healing and healthcare. But there are also times when we do not know we have failed or made an error, let alone are aware of a knowledge gap. For example, sometimes we find ourselves in situations where our idea or thinking or answer makes such intuitive sense that we do not stop to think or even reflect that it could be wrong. In such cases, we first need to be given a chance to discover the error of our thinking, and only then we become aware of our knowledge gap. Interesting. When intuition failure builds awareness. So now we are saying that intuition, you must doubt your intuition. Then only you will become better. It is time to take a test. Try to answer the following three problems. Let's look at the problems. I will copy the problem and share it with you right away. So it's available to you even if you don't have a recording of this session. The recording of this session should be available by tomorrow morning. So if you missed today and if you want more, you can please replay the entire session tomorrow. Before we get to the solutions, reflect on your thought process as you attempted the problems. Chances are that for each problem, your first answer was an intuitive one. For the first problem, you might have immediately thought, let's go look at the problem now. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat cost $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? For the first problem, you might have immediately thought of 10 cents as the answer. If it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets? For the second question, you may have guessed 100 minutes. And for the third set, the final answer that most people think is 24 days. Let's look at the third question. In a lake, there is a patch of lily pads. Every day, the patch doubles in size. If it takes 48 days for the patch to cover the entire lake, how long would it take for the patch to cover half of the lake in the number of days? All three answers are wrong. So we are challenging intuition. The test, developed by Shane Frederick in 2005, was designed precisely to have such a property that the most intuitive answers that most people would think of would likely be the wrong ones. He called it the cognitive reflection test, CRT. If people succumb to their immediate intuitions, they are most likely get it wrong. If, however, they allow themselves a chance to reflect upon it, chances of getting the correct answers increase. This is the whole story behind reflection and critical thinking. You have to allow yourself to reflect. In this mad digital world, I think reflection is the biggest challenge. Believe me, you don't even have enough time to see your own reflection in the mirror because you are digitally distracted. And half the mirror photographs will have a phone in your hand. Think about it. If you're not able to doubt your intuition, if you're not able to think, if you're not able to reflect, how challenged you are. It is this property of the CRT that makes it a perfect candidate for examining if and to what extent we can learn from intuitive failure. These kinds of tests allow us to examine what happens when people are made aware that their intuitive answer is wrong and whether they change their mind when a correct explanation is given immediately afterwards. You'll say, I thought so. In 2014, Emmanuel Rouche and colleagues carried out several experiments to test precisely this question. They also added several problems like the ones above, and that have similar properties like the CRT. Let's copy this problem so that you can challenge yourself post the session. All the work we do is in the Saturday Masterclass group and not the Sunbeam Masterclass. So be sure where you're going to look for information. We go for all the information to the Saturday Masterclass group. Roosh and colleagues asked participants to solve items like those in the CRT and the ones above. As expected, many got them wrong. Let's look at the problems. Julie puts her books on the shelf in her bedroom. She realizes that her favorite book is the 33rd from the left and 44th from the right. How many books does Julie have on her shelf? Would you like to put in the chat box? Try and put an answer to this problem in the chat box. Let me see what answers come. 33 from the left, 44 from the right. How many books do you think Julie has? Let me see what answers come. Give an intuitive answer. Don't worry about it. Think, think. Think. The problem is there in your WhatsApp. Give it a thought. Give an intuitive answer in the chat box. Great. That's Rajni's first answer. Thank you, Rajni. Ela, thank you for the congratulations. Just for the knowledge of everyone, next week, finally, after 6 months, we will not have a Saturday session or a Friday session. Saturday is the masterclass, and Friday is the brewing knowledge session, which I presume some of you attend and more would like to attend. So please excuse me next Friday and Saturday. I've shared the good news and thank you for your good wishes, the flowers, the love, the congratulations. I can't thank each one personally, so I say it aloud here in a recorded masterclass and hope my message reaches you. So we've had two people saying 76. We love you. Thank you for that. Brilliant. So many are saying 76. So let's go ahead and see what the intuitive answer is. The second question. Paul is looking at Linda and Linda is looking at Patrick. Paul is married, but Patrick is not. Is a person who's married looking at a person who is not married? Try and answer this. Paul is married to Linda and Linda is looking at Patrick. Paul is married, but Patrick is not. Is the person who is married looking at the person who is not married? Yes, no, cannot be determined. Let me see how much you answer. Try and answer this. Very interesting. The question is there in your chat box. And don't flip the page, please, with the book, if you have the book. So a lot of you are giving cannot be determined. So let's go ahead. Therefore, participants knew that these are not expert explanations, which also means that they had no way of knowing if the explanations were correct or not. Imagine yourself in this experiment. So you get to question, you solve it intuitively. You think you got it right when in fact you are wrong. You are then randomly presented with either a correct or an incorrect explanation given by someone like you from an earlier experiment. You do not know how for sure if they are correct or not. You can only rely on your ability to discern. The question is, would you change your mind if you come across an explanation that runs counter to your reasoning and answer? Question to you. The question is, would you change your mind if you come across an explanation that runs counter to your reasoning? Question to you, yes or no? Yes or no in the chat box. Would you change your mind if you come across an explanation that runs counter to your reasoning? Next question. Would a counter explanation answer be sufficient to make you aware of the fault in your reasoning? Think about it. It turns out 45% of the time people did change their mind, having gotten it intuitively wrong. The mere presentation of counter explanation and answer was sufficient to make them aware that their reasoning was faulty. Without the counter explanation, that may not have happened at all. Even if we do not know we were wrong, we have the ability to discern and correct ourselves provided the counter explanation is given right after our answer. Therefore, we have seen these figures show that in such explanation has to come in before, not after the awareness of the knowledge gap. Because people may not have even realized they were wrong to begin with. An explanation then increases the probability that people realize their failure first and then become aware of the knowledge gap. And that is when the explanation leads to learning. Now, you may say that 45% may seem like a small number, but this was also a much stricter test given that people did not know whether the counter explanations were correct or not. The only thing they could see was that the explanation was counter to theirs. The contrast between their explanation and counter was all they had to work with. Skill, Still, in the end, many changed their minds and adopted the correct answer. That sets up the intriguing possibility. What if the counter explanations were explained by the people who know the right answer? Perhaps if someone who knows the right answer explains it to you, maybe the chances of changing your mind would be even higher. Roosh and colleagues tested this in the following follow-up experiment. They tested people first individually and then in groups. So this time as a participant, you were given similar problems, but you first solve them individually and then in small groups of 3 to 5 until the group reaches a consensus. After that, you solve two new problems, transfer problems, requiring each reasoning but in different contexts. So here's a design for an experiment which may you may want to do, which may be your productive failure experiment. So I've changed my terminology from assignment to experiment because assignment only gives you theoretical. Experiment gives you practice of the theory. And that's what we are looking for when we are asking you to design your productive failure. Once again, if there was at least one person in the group who had solved the problem correctly individually before the group consensus almost always adopt this correct reasoning and answer. So if someone has taken the lead, you tend to follow that person. Even when there was exactly one group member with the correct answer, they too almost always managed to convince the group to adopt the correct answer. Extreme group discussion allowed people to share their reasoning, compare and contrast with each other, and those with the incorrect reasoning could see where they were wrong and therefore change their mind. Without the opportunity to see the correct reasoning, people may not even have known that they were incorrect. But once an opportunity presented itself in a group discussions, it often did, then correct reasoning was contagious. So here you are, there's failure, there's explanation, it increases awareness, and that's how learning happens. Indeed, as depicted in figure 4.4, it was correct explanations that made people check their own explanations and realize at once that they were wrong and became aware of their gap in reasoning. Group discussions allow for such explanations to be shared, making people aware of their errors, leading them to changing their minds and adopt the correct answer. And it is not merely that people adopt the correct answer, they actually learn the correct explanation to solve such problem in general. How do we know? Recall that people were individually asked to solve two problems, transfer problems, requiring similar reasoning but in different context. On these problems, resulted showed that the people who changed their mind were also able to better perform on the individual transfer problems, demonstrating that they actually learned something from their errors thanks to the group discussion. So, in your IB, you have a lot of group discussion time. The teaching methodology is different from instructional methodology, and that's where you experience the joy of learning. Once again, it turns out that even if at first we do not know we are wrong, we have the ability to discern and correct ourselves provided the counter explanation is given right after our answer. We have the capacity to change our minds. It begs the question, however, whether such a capacity is more general across all contexts. Clearly, strongly held beliefs are hard to change, like for most of us. It is hard to see anyone holding on to answers to the above problems in the form of hard belief one might have, say, about their more personal, sensitive issues like abortion, vaccination, equality, rights, and responsibilities, and many others. To be clear, findings from studies above do not apply to strongly held belief systems because the latter are not intuitive in nature. Instead, they are beliefs we get enculturated into over many years, which is why we believe them strongly and they're hard to change. So, in the current world, you will find that some of us feel that some people are hard boiled. Some people are stuck to a particular expanse of time or thought. And then you say, oh, forget it. It's very hard to change this person. Why should I argue? This person is so stuck to an ideology, this person will not learn, which is a fact. Because everyone who has an ideology feels very strongly about it. But please understand that awareness of your being sticky to the ideology will break the impasse. The above findings only apply to intuitive answers, ones that we do not hold too closely, but we still test the notion of strongly held answer, even if it is intuitive, by examining how confident we are in it. So now you are going into the level of confidence. Sometimes we hold on to an idea or a misconception because it makes such strong intuitive sense, and we are confident that we are right. It would be intuitive to conjecture that the lower the confidence we have in our intuitive answers, the easier we should be able to change our minds when a counter explanation is provided. Or is it, as we see in the next section, sometimes our overconfidence seduces us into thinking that our answer is so obviously true that a lesson in humility is needed. So we will record this particular quote. I think it's a very important quote, and I am going to put a bookmark here. And then next time we will discover how we are humbled so often in a classroom by being sometimes not understanding to what is happening, by sometimes not challenging ourselves enough to understand every child, by sometimes being overconfident, which a teacher should never be. Because if a teacher is overconfident, a teacher cannot learn. That's the beauty. So that's our bookmark for today. Humbled over 6 years old. So let's park this as a bookmark. This bookmark is going to be for what date? Can you please write the date in the chat box? Please write the date in the chat box when we will use this bookmark. Take a guess. We made a little announcement. When are we meeting again for the next masterclass? Are we meeting in the month of June?
Is it for July?
Yes, we are meeting in the month of July. So the next masterclass will be 5th of July 2025. Same time and same place. Here we go. So the bookmark is with you. Same time, same place. But it will be 5th of July. You know, it's interesting, and I want to share a very personal note. I thought over this announcement for almost 2.5 weeks. And I thought to myself, sometimes we have to take a pause. And taking a pause is where this whole story of Impasse came, the whole story of learning came. this whole idea of thinking over came when we went through last month. I had my challenges, and I came to you even in the challenge when I lost my mother just 3 days before the masterclass. I still attended it. I've thought over it whole week that I did my duty as a teacher, but sometimes it's just not duty. And I understand you as a teacher very deeply as to what it matters to be with your people and why sometimes, despite the best of duty intention, you do have to take a choice. And please bear with me, I took a choice today that next week I shall not do my 2 sessions. And I hope you'll bear with me and give me this relief. We will continue from 5th of July. So take a break. But yes, please read on. Read the book. You have the book, even if you read ahead, it's great. As some of you have the book, and I'm so happy that some of you have the book. It's a brilliant investment, let me tell you. There's no better investment. Believe you in me, if you can handle this book, you have done a doctorate. And I have mentioned to Gurdeep, and we are following up. We will get Dr. Manu Kapoor at an opportune time. When you are ready with some deep questions, when you are ready with an example or two, when you have done some experiments, we will have, yes, thank you, Rajni. We have obligations to both, and both are important. So thank you for being with me. It's always wonderful. I look forward to these sessions. I know they are webinars. So on that note, let me tell you, our Friday sessions are meetings and not webinars. We have shared today yesterday's video, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I encourage you to please come and join us on Friday. It's a different way of working. So on Fridays, you can feel more compassion and more emotion. You can talk to us. We talk in Hindi, we talk in English. We not only read just one book about teaching and learning, we also share stories about Rumi. We refer to blogs. It's more interactive. So that's a different design, while this session focus purely on what we call a master class on productive failure. So this is more of a professional learning session which helps teachers from one set of schools, while the Friday session is a general session which helps everyone, and you try to figure out why I teach. That's the whole idea of a Friday session. Why do we go to school? We try and answer that. So do join us in the Brewing Knowledge Fridays. We'd love to see you there. And on that note, I bow down to each one of you and ask you to please bear with me. I'll miss you next weekend. But I assure you, when I come back in July, I will come back with more vigor and energy. I've had two most tumultuous moments of my life, having lost a loved one and having found a loved one, and it happened in a matter of days. Well, that's God's will. I know we will lose the masterclass next week, but I'll make up on the one after that. Thank you. Jai Hinds to many of you. And yes, please remember, we are together here to spread the joy of learning. And we are all happy teachers. That's why we are here. We wouldn't have been here. So, towards your happiness, a toast. Please look after yourself. Self care is the first care. Do take care of yourself. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ela, for your lovely comments. And we will see you next on 5th of July. The video of this recording will be available in the next few hours. We work on the YouTube channel. Before you go, I will take you to the YouTube channel so that we all know what I'm referring to. I'll just do that in a second so that you're happy that you haven't missed anything. People who couldn't attend, you have a challenge. Your school may ask you for attendance. Please overcome that at your end. And yes, all your attendance is recorded by every minute. We share the entire Zoom attendance record with this Sunbeams group of schools, not with anyone else, because they monitor your presence in our sessions. So our YouTube channel is very simple. You go to YouTube and you press my good school. Very simple. You will reach here at my good school. So YouTube channel will look like this. I will just bring it up to you. That's the YouTube channel. Yeah, so you'll get a welcome as you reach there. And then you can go to videos. And I just want to refer to one video before we go. It's the video of yesterday, enhancing education through reading. I think it's going to be worth your while to play this video once. And for the teachers who couldn't make it today, I'm sure you will watch the video tomorrow. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Spread the joy of learning, design your productive failure, and I'm sure your experiments will come up great. Does anyone want to say anything or come up with conversation? Take the mic. I'm happy to unmute you. Anyone?
So I just want to say, like from Saturday Masterclass to you, a very big congratulations and travel safe.
Thank you, brilliant, and thank you for looking after my good school.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
And beautiful part about my good school is we have reached a stage where we are now top up. So we have a space of 100, we will stay to a space of 100. So if you make it in the first 100, you enter. After that, watch the video. That's all MOOC learning happens. Only some people can make it. It has to be on first come, first serve. We can't keep expanding the sessions with numbers because we are not certain whether these numbers will come every time. So, on that note, it's always wonderful to be at the masterclass. Thank you, Manisha, for your good wishes. Thank you, Gurdeep, for all you do to announce and help us. And Gurdeep, we always cherish your assignments. Thank you, Gurdeep, for your congratulations. Please, Gurdeep, give us some thought provoking assignments. Like today's quizzes are very interesting. Maybe you can use these in your class. So, as you share data and things from your class, we also share food for thought for you. And that's why we are here. We are here to prompt you, we are here to prime you, we are here to activate you. And that's how your awareness will happen. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. And thanks for the few extra minutes. Take care. God bless you all.